What is happening, everyone? We are back. Happy Tuesday, everyone out there. What's happening, Hexco? Let me know. Put your question in the chat. We're gonna blaze through a lot of different topics, so we can kick it off really soon. Got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. However, today, one sec, technical difficulties. Hold on. Pile on in here. Give me just a second. Also, shout out to chat. You guys are awesome. I will get to the comments in just a second. All right. Yeah, we're good to go. Without further ado, welcome back to the show. Axis Live and Crispy Man. What's going on, gentlemen?
Hey now. You're muted.
Uh-oh, you got him. Crispy's muted. Didn't even get to retort. No, it's still muted.
Oh, look at him go. He's just yelling at us. No, he's just so he can't figure out where the mute button is.
I'm a boomer. Come on, man. I was just saying, oi, oi, hey now.
Stay crispy.
We're back.
Yeah, stay
back. We're back. It's been
it's been a while, Max. How's life been? I haven't talked to you since before Richard's lawyers whooped some ass in New York.
I heard there was a whooping. I think that was whooping is what they're calling it. I think so.
Yeah, officially
the whooping.
Yeah, the whooping.
I think it's official.
Living life to the max.
To life. Yeah. It's
to the window, to the wall.
To the whooping.
To the RHMax.
The Hexaco and
dripping down his balls.
There's something to that.
Or something.
I was gonna detour that into Hexaco related rap, but Axis just crashed us into the actual lyrics, which are near and dear to so many people's hearts. I understand.
That's right.
Great classic song from what I hear as well.
Absolutely classic.
Good stuff. Meeting up. I was talking about in the green room too. We got a meetup. Hex birthday meetup coming up on the 1st. Very excited for that. Got some t-shirts made.
Well, first of what? First of what?
1st of December, which is the day before.
So will you be celebrating International Cuatro Cinco Day as well?
Is that the 1st of December?
Well, it's the 2nd, but I mean, since you're not getting together the 2nd.
Is that tradition?
Yeah, you guys can do is get all your stakes done on the 1st so that they become active on the 2nd.
Okay.
Cuatro Cinco.
I like that. I will propose it. We don't usually do a lot of.
I'm surprised you didn't see that tweet come through. The whole community was starting to rally around the idea. It was.
Yeah, we've been talking about it.
Yeah, everyone on December 2nd, everyone's going to put out a 15-year stake, and we're going to clog up the S-load function.
Yeah.
The less X, the better these days. I think is I don't know. X is getting a little bit more fun. I'll say that. The last 30 days of X and Hex have been a lot more fun than usual. I'll say that too.
Oh yeah. How can you not have fun when Hex is doing a 5X in 3 weeks?
It's all part of whooping and glory.
I told you so, Axis. I told you.
You did.
I did.
You told me. You said, "Hey,
guys,
you're a noob. I know you think you're cool and you know a lot, but you just paint lines on charts and you don't know even how to make a chart.
Got to stake it to
You don't even know what the real Hex chart is. You still think it's on Ethereum."
Yeah, I know.
Cry myself to sleep.
I know, baby.
How's the chat doing?
Chat's popping, man. Mr. Chuck says Hex is a better Bitcoin and PulseChain is a better Ethereum. They could be worth just as much or more if you consider the potential. It's a huge discount with tremendous upside. Mr. Chuck, what a comment.
I tend to agree. I don't want to hog the mic, but dude, I mean, look at the only difference is that the amount of people using it pretty much is or acceptance, which is just a belief system anyways. It's pretty hard to crack. I think Chuck's got it figured out.
Chicks dig Hex, man. Just remember.
Chicks dig Chucks.
They dig Chucks.
Especially when Chuck's on a lot of Hex.
5. Shout out DJ and Hexkin as well. Cuatro Cinco.
Hey, don't forget International Cuatro Cinco Day is December 2nd.
Share his Hex birthday, and if you're celebrating before or after, then you can do your stakes whenever you want if you feel the need. 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, 1 year. I mean, staking and staking. There's different, whatever your flavor is.
There's an infinite number of options to, the only thing you can't do is go longer than 5, 5, 5, 5. But other than that, I mean, the contract is your oyster, as they say.
Speaking of oysters, anything happening in the sea of Hexco? That's a terrible pun. But liquidity. How do we?
I thought you were going somewhere else for the whole oyster thing. But okay, go ahead.
I mean, there's so many different directions. I mean, Axis started off with he started singing a song, and now
Axis adapted Baby Shark song for Hex. Maybe he'll sing it for us.
Baby Hex up do 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 baby Hex.
If we just wouldn't lose it on the whole copyright thing, man, we just do that. We just be singing Baby Hex do 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 do. Grandma Hex. Grandpa Hex. Hey, you ever listen to those words? Go listen to them. It's a devilish song. It's very dark song.
Ascending Triangle. 4-hour chart Hex breakout tonight or tomorrow. We're gonna get into that at some point.
I can pull that up straight away. Like I'd love to just you're sure we could talk about Hex and then roll into some liquidity data.
He's wrong though. It's gonna be the day after tomorrow. He's wrong.
All right, just give me a second.
Let's be very specific here.
I need by the minute.
Somebody was saying talk Hexy to me and there. I was just gonna say Hex 2. Hex 2.
Who's making a Hex 2? Didn't somebody do that already?
Oh yeah, Hex 2 is already about. I was talking about Hex 2. Hex 2.
Oh, like Hawk 2.
Hex 2. You want to make it so obvious? Hex 2. All
right, French. It's French, right?
That doesn't look like a chart.
This is a chart. So yeah, USD Hex 2. This was my key level. So this is such a good setup, guys. Good job there, Hexicans. You did good. You did real good there, bud. We're just sitting at weekly resistance right now. So this, once you break, look at this has been resistance a lot in the history of Hex on PulseChain. For many, many, many weeks, it was resistance, and we got 1 week above, and that's when good old Richie said, "No more. Your eHex is no longer valid," and it did temporary brand damage to the price. And that really opened up the playing field quite nicely for an entry down at around 3 to 4 tenths of a cent. And wow, what a violent reversal off that level. I mean, I remember the sentiment down there was so bad. I'm pretty sure somewhere around here I was like, dude, Hex is a piece of shit. I'm pretty sure I said that publicly somewhere. And
that kind of sounds like you.
Whenever I get down on something, it's time to buy. I mean, I'm the perfect signal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got something to add to that too, man. But
red candles hurt from time to time. However, bigger picture feels good.
So the interesting thing about if we're just going to chart this quick, like this resistance area here, this was at 1.8 cents. I mean, this was significant going all the way back to the beginning, essentially back in May and June of 2023 with these two candle closes here. And it's funny, like people say TA doesn't work and whatnot, but it really is as simple as weekly and monthly resistance levels, and once you break them, it's like up or down, right? So it's your options here on the weekly and the monthly are so simple. It's either you're either going back down here or you're going up here. Like you could say that there's a key area here around 2.25 cents, but we could blow right through that because it is here on this weekly candle close. But that's the two levels then. So it would be like 2.25 cents is first stop. What do you do? Chop there for a day and then go straight to the highs? That's kind of what I'm thinking. So it's either that or something like this. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think, guys? What do you think?
How much does the Trump pump play into this? I think it's what a lot of people are asking too. Does this lead us to...
Oh, it's got everything to do with it.
Trump hasn't pumped me yet. Not with this. Hey, You know,
That's a great question.
along these lines, I just want to throw this to you guys because I'm faced with doing some end stakes this week and next week.
Mhm.
$400 in end stake, and half my stakes are worthless because I can't end them. So okay, so besides the fact that I'm pissed off about that with Ethereum, supply shock, right? So staking may not be the best idea, certainly not with small quantities on Ethereum, but there's going to be a huge weird change over time as more of this supply gets warped, right? Because people aren't going to be able to earn their stakes. I mean, you know, a couple 100,000 hex was coming out. I would have thought I could have ended it, right? But I can't. Right, we could, but I'm just it's not worth the hex. The hex isn't worth the value of the ETH.
Well, as long as they don't bleed out before the time comes up, you know, if hex does get momentum,
yeah, but it
EX
does
side too.
Yeah, there is that. But what I'm saying is, even with that, during this period of time, there's going to be a lot more. This is going to get bit, and meaning people aren't going to come back, etc. For some of those. Anyways, I think it's more of a supply shock for sure. It's gonna really change our dynamics over some time, but we won't see it for 2 years. But I'm just sharing my own personal irritation. But going into this, I just mean I for what you were asking, Axis, I think it means we have even more chance to pump because I'm not going to have that EHEX, that extra 500,000 EHEX to do anything with.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me add this too. I know we're bouncing back and forth between the two hexes, but this post by HexGita was pretty telling to me. He went and built a tool.
Hex Geta.
More. I mean, look at this. The white. So what's going on here? Pink line is with the dollar chart I just showed you. White line is the liquidity on PulseChain for PHEX, and so you could see that it, you know, basically it's inversely correlated. So look, price is getting ready to break out as liquidity is rolling over.
Well, why though? Why?
Well,
why? I have an answer, but what's your reason for why the liquidity is going down? I got 2 answers really.
Yeah, you probably have similar answers to what I have, huh?
Well, I'll tell you my answer, and then you tell me if I'm wrong. Why is it happening? Because the average person, they don't want to take any more impermanent loss. They want to hold on to their hex. They think it's going to go up in price. The market makers are adding more to the market because that's what you do when you get towards the top. You don't add as much to the market. So, I mean, however way you want to interpret that, that's how I interpret those 2 things.
There's that element of it for sure.
Of course, there's people just buying it, right? Too, but
well, and I mean, there's a lot of things going on there. The incentive isn't really there to keep your hex and your pulse in that farm, in the V1 farm. I think it's paying like 20% or 18% or something. And I mean, hex is going up to double. It's doubling like regularly now. So the doubling, yeah, the impermanent loss is what you just said. And then in the structure of the LP, you could see that it's flat. I can't draw right now. I don't know why this tool won't pull up on here, but I wish it did. But you could see like how this is creating a sideways little structure here. Look at how that, when it did that before, it did like sideways and then it would break down, sideways and break down, sideways and break down. And inside of there, you had some pumpage when these breakdowns would occur here, here. So price pumps when there's a shortage of liquidity because it's easier to move the price and there's less available for sale. So that's a correlation. Yeah, you have all that feeding into there and, you know, FOMO basically. And the other part was, yeah, the ink rewards just aren't there to incentivize. Like the dollar amount of the ink that you're earning isn't enough to keep people in the farm with their hex. That's not to say that they're not in there with the other coins though. Like the other 3 RH tokens. But yeah, hex is looking pretty beast here. So, you know, the obvious thing is like it's going to break probably to the upper limit here and try to test the all-time highs in dollar. And that's probably going to come on the back of Pulse strength. Like I don't think that happens because Pulse is weak.
But are we gonna be out of this channel tomorrow?
Are we gonna be out of it tomorrow? Yeah, I mean, it's good. There's a good chance of it. But look at how many times we were rejected in here. So then I would say, yeah. I mean, it's not going to spend as much time getting rejected this time. And the liquidity, let's see, where was the liquidity at back in there? It was lower. It was lower last time. So that means that a market maker can come and consume more HEX now at the same price as it was back here with less liquidity on the market. That may be a play for the market maker to absorb more of that supply and run it up versus buying into a black hole down here where you're not getting anything and you're eating all that slippage. There's definitely, it's multi-layered for sure.
Just want to bring up this tweet recently to NAS momentum bridge activity. Has that been feeding into the liquidity, like the different bridge stuff that's been happening lately that's been everywhere? Is that like we're seeing any big changes? Any of the pairs? I know there was a huge, and kind of on that too. There was a huge, was the HEX sale that happened the other day, and then it actually sold Pulse, like it got converted into Pulse during the routing and sold Pulse down or something. You guys remember that? That huge HEX sell, and then it like basically sold Pulse because that all the liquidity was tied to that, something like that.
Yeah.
That's an interesting piece. I don't know if you cover that or anything yet, but like that's how do big HEX buys and sells? I mean, of course, we talked about Hart's Law, bonding, and all that stuff before too. But is that that was interesting to see it like a big HEX sell turned into, okay, it wasn't taking a lot of the HEX DAI stuff. It was taking a lot of the Pulse and like selling it for, I think they were getting DAI or something out of it at the time. Chat, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, if you just, I can draw up a visual of it pretty quickly. It basically looks like this. This is a really important point for people to realize too. So let me delete some stuff here so it doesn't confuse anybody. But basically, when somebody buys or sells HEX, let's say HEX is over here. Whenever they're doing whatever they're doing with it, right? They're basically making a decision of what they're going to come in with, if it's fresh capital coming in. So that means like stables, like eDAI, or they're buying with Wrap Pulse, or they're buying with Wrapped ETH. All of these, like if you're coming in from outside the chain with Wrapped ETH or eDAI, it's got a route through Pulse to get to HEX. And vice versa. If they're selling HEX, it has to wrap through Wrap Pulse to get to eDAI or to get to WETH. So there's no escaping Pulse and HEX moving together to some degree. These are interlinked by that liquidity pool I was telling you about, the V1. And generally there's not, that's the biggest pool. So it's servicing a large majority of the transaction volume for that market. So if you're trying to get from HEX to eDAI, like, I don't know what the numbers are. This is off my top of my head. Like 5% will hit it direct, but like 95% will hit it here, and then that will route to eDAI, for example. So that the HEX seller gets the eDAI by selling down the Pulse price and then getting the eDAI returned back to the buyer or the seller. And it works in the other direction too, obviously. Where if you're coming in with let's say Wrapped ETH and you're buying HEX through an order router, it's going to jump from Wrap Pulse to HEX. So hop number 1 is to Pulse, hop number 2 is to HEX. And then the buyer gets the HEX, and the ETH gets deposited into the Wrapped ETH Wrap Pulse pool, and then the Pulse gets deposited into the Wrap Pulse HEX pool. Pretty simple. And so when these transactions are happening, it's basically just like we can measure the actual impact of it. So from September 9th to the peak, HEX did a 3x over Pulse. So, but what did that mean in dollar terms from September 9th? Because that's just telling you the difference between them. But so it did a 5.2x against the dollar from September 9th. And then Wrap Pulse did 90%. So for ease of use, we'll just say it did a 2x. So in the same time that HEX did a 4.2x, Pulse only did a a 1.9x or whatever. And so ultimately what that result, that's where you get that differential. And that's why we just say, we skip all the math and we just look at the hex pulse ratio. And that's where you're getting the 3x difference in this chart. And that's where you broke the all-time high against pulse back here. And now you're trying to, and then what happened now recently was you flipped that as support. So hex is relatively much stronger than, it's much more powerful than pulse right now. I flipped that level and it looks like it wants to go higher.
Yeah, check. This is the tweet I was talking about too. Dip catcher. One way to think about liquidity bonding is selling 90 million hex is actually selling 22 billion pulse.
Mm-hmm.
It's got the pair here, and then talks about 22 effective PLS cells, about 0.13 of the user-owned PLS supply, resulting in 943 dies, about 1% of the stables in ETH in the bridge. Very interesting.
And so, like, it's interesting. I don't want to get too far off track here, but it is interesting that as the ratios of these assets change, it changes the power dynamic in the chain with who holds what. So right now, the hex holders are in control of kind of how money flows throughout the chain relative to the other tokens because they're the most expensive asset right now, and everyone else is, and that's important too for founders to consider. Obviously, another component that would be need consideration is the amount of TVL that backs your token and what you consider real. A liquidity backing or maximum extractable value, and what you consider Fugazi liquidity backing, which is most altcoins that don't have that pair with these exotic pairs with no real route to real liquidity to cash out into a bank account. So you're the less friction there is to go with high dollar amounts into your bank account is the more valuable I think some of these assets could be considered. On that note, Crispy's done a lot of work on liquidity and valuations, and I don't know, like, if you guys want to stay on liquidity to start, maybe. This is I just got to shill hexfire.io for a second because this tool, this basket of tools basically puts you in a league of your own. There's so much actionable insight you can get from these data sets, and it's not just hex. It covers everything on PulseChain, and even some of the tokens on Ethereum for that matter. And we have Bitcoin charts and ETH charts, so there's a lot of good data there. This particular one that you're looking at on screen is it's called the Spot LP APYs, and what it does is you can pick an ecosystem. I know we like the hex one personally, but you click on hex and you could see which hex pairs are getting hit for the highest APY. And, I'm kind of like a snob when it comes to my liquidity pools, and I don't want to see things that, are doing like if it's got 63% APR, but it's only got a small amount of liquidity in it, like $3,000, that might be a good threshold for you. But maybe you want to see things that you can actually put substantial liquidity in so that the dollar that you make could be more. Because notice how this is paying 194%, but you're only getting $15 over 24 hours. So you really want to find, I can basically filter up here if I want to see by fees. I could say I only want to see, I don't know, 44% in fees. You can get a better idea of okay, here's one that did 122% that paid $600 in fees in the last 24 hours. It was the Hex Wrap Pulse pool. Big surprise, right? But this is a V3 pool on 9mm to be exact. So somebody had a nice tight range in there that was making some good money. And that just happened today. Those are the kinds of opportunities that you look for in something like this. Yeah, Crispy, I'd love to hear your input and what you want to take it. You're muted, buddy.
Yeah, well, with this particular piece of work that I've got up here, that let's see. Of course, it is spot, so we're looking at what's on Deck Screener. I'm finding it most useful for just telling me really quickly what the heck is going on in the in the ecosystem, because by reviewing it, I know immediately, are we seeing a pump? Are we not seeing a pump? What's happening with the APRs, what's happening with the volume. That's one of the big things. It's just from a high level. A lot of help with doing the research on liquidity providing. Most people, listen, most people, you shouldn't do liquidity providing. That's my opinion, because it's too hard. But if you are going to do it, you should have some good tools, right? And so that part of it, being able to know the data and whatnot's really useful. The other thing, I think, and this is for everybody, it really demonstrates, having looked at this, like when we go over the pie charts and stuff, you can actually see, oh my gosh, man, look at all this volume. It's all V1 volume. What are the biggest pairs? They're all RH pairs. What's number 2? V2, HEX PulseX V2 is the number 2. So it really starts to lay out like what's happening on chain. And so, yeah. Anyways.
So to keep it interesting for the community that's listening in, the real one of the more fun innovations that came out of this whole data set was the ability to visualize like the liquidity web, the total liquidity web of the entire blockchain, up to what we've decided to put into the data set, which is how many tokens now? I don't know how many you got in here. It's a decent amount.
There's about 500 or so.
500 of the most popular. And if you have a suggestion, please reach out. We'll look at it. But this is like a good example of what we're talking about. Hopefully this will load relatively quick here today. If I click this button.
Yeah,
ooh, look at all the colors. Wow.
So this is the spider web of the top tokens on PulseChain. And I can zoom in and I can look at like, okay, this is probably way too chaotic, right? There's not a lot of actionable stuff I can get because it's too much data to show you guys on a live stream. But
I'm looking for RHMax. Where are you?
I can close this down, all the connected pools, and then it'll zoom it in, and it'll give me just general total valuations. So Rat Pulse is sitting with $225 million of liquidity. With all of its connected pairs, PDI, 56 million, Atropa, 70 million, PUSDC, 24 million. And so what we did here was we just took the ones that had more than $1 million of liquidity. And you really can boil the chain down to this, essentially, which is, it's not as big as you think, is what we're kind of coming to the conclusion of. Is there's a few winners that have decent backing, and the rest are still growing. The chain is still young. So trying to just kind of quick sort by kind of sub ecosystems here a little bit. But yeah, you can kind of see how this all kind of plays out. You get, the Atropa ecosystem, the Alien ecosystem, the Solid Index, stable coins, and Ethereum. And then the hexes and Helgo, and then the other 3 RH coins. And this is basically the bulk of the liquidity on the chain from what we're looking at. This is anything with over $1 million of liquidity behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, hey, for you guys who like some of these tokens, sorry, I didn't think they were the top ones, but I was surprised by like number 2. We know that UFO and PTGC have taken off like freaking banshees, but here they are. Top tokens. Axis is up there. The nice surprise. Solid X, 9-inch. I'm not really sure what 2 and down do, but tied pretty close in that ecosystem. And so, yeah, I mean, hey, by this measure, these are your top players, man.
So this is the $1 million liquidity or more, but is there a list of $1 million extractable value liquidity? How different does this look with that?
Yep, there is. It's a different tool set. So I'll just go to that one. It's called PulseChain Value Web. And it just looks at backed by RH tokens, basically, right?
RH and P stables and P stables and E stables. You got to change your pair liquidity at the top and then select something.
So anything with $1 million of liquidity that's backed by any of the core coins or stable coins should have the same, should have that extractable value as well, right?
Yeah, there's arguments about what's really extractable, but that's for the geeks to figure out, right? But what we're doing is I'm just adding up the value of the LP that is to EWETH, E-wrapped Ethereum, E-wrapped Bitcoin, E-DAI, EUSDT, but it also includes the P stables as well, because that's kind of like an interweb. There could be some different ways we can present the data, but yeah, because you get this argument about total extractable. At least I have the argument. Just because, let's say it's a very simplified pair. If I have a token and it is tied to E-DAI and it's got $100,000, then you might argue that total extractable is close to $100,000, whatever the calculation ends up being. If you were even completely able to empty out the LP. But just because it's connected to something else that is not E-DAI doesn't mean it doesn't also have a path. Right. So there are multiple paths, and then it becomes less of something you can really figure out as you go further through the web, because nobody's taking everything out of one token at one time, right? So then they're all going to be competing. So you'll need a quantum computer to figure out what actually will happen. And so what we'll be reduced to is watching what happens and recording it and then knowing for the next time. But
still impressive too to see, having 10 or 20 outside of the core coins that have that much liquidity. And then we could again factor in the extractable value and even estimations on I was going to say how much you could actually get because the selling would, if that changed the price in different ways. But anyways, I think Axis is trying to show something.
Yeah, you go ahead. I mean, you may have a token you want to see on here. I was just going to show kind of how some of these webs interplay with each other. And oh no, I do that.
Also, people are asking for the website. Is it public or?
No, this is not public.
Sure.
No.
Okay.
No, it's
too much power.
It's too much power for the regular person. But this is actually a lot of data because we've got 100,000 pairs on PulseChain, minimum 100,000 pairs. So being able to get to this kind of data is pretty rough. So it's only for my members, and there's a subscription fee that I have to pay in addition to for each person that views it. So anyway,
one of the things I like to do is change. So I like to filter out pairs that don't have a certain amount of volume. So if we want to really limit our results to just powerful pairs, I'll go and make it that if it didn't do more than $10,000 of volume over the last 24 hours, I'm not interested. And then when you're looking at, I got Solid X up here and Axis here and Pulse here. So Pulse is obviously the main token on the chain. So it's got all kinds of pairs. And if I zoom in, the deep green big ones, these are your main, farms on V1. Not to anyone's surprise, I'm sure. HEX Pulse, 32 million bucks. Wrap Pulse USDT bridged in, 12 million bucks, 22 million on Wrapped ETH. 34 million on E-DAI, 36 million on Inc, and 14 million on EUSDC, and then 53 million on PLSX. So that's your beefier ones. But then if you drill down even further, you can see HEX has 167K with Pulse, USDL, USDT, X token, ICOSA, DWB, Finvest, Atropa. There's all these smaller ones. So we tried to color code them and make the bubble sizes so they're somewhat relevant to the size of the pairs that you're looking into. And then where this tool becomes really valuable is when you start drawing up connections between pairs. So the reason why, so here's an example of filtering out. So, Axis and Solid X are connected directly by multiple pairs, but because I filtered out less than $10,000 it's basically saying that these two pairs, the direct connections, didn't do more than $10,000 of volume today, which is really kind of interesting because when you really consider the price action, which I'll just briefly describe, Axis had a lot of sell pressure.
Can I interrupt you for a moment? And in addition to that, if you really want to show that, you could go over to your back over to the liquidity web, because you're on the value web, and since neither of those are value, They don't,
Oh,
you know,
that's why.
access the other token. They're not
So maybe it
matched.
did do that would make sense. And so then that's why. Okay, so this is even okay. So this isn't going to show that connection here because it's an exotic to an exotic pair. I'd have to go back to the other web, but or the other tool. But it's basically saying that Axis has 464K of MEV, maximum extractable valuable, in the web based on some parameters that Crispy set up, which is basically Richard Hart tickers or bridged end stables or ETH. And then SolidX is sitting on 1.74 million. But PDI is included in that. So PDI and I was thinking Wrap ETC would show up here, but there is massive PDI pairs with SolidX. So that's where it's getting a lot of its value from. And so some people might say, well, PDI isn't valuable. It's not real value. But actually, this is the thing that's interesting.
It's got a lot of pulse against it, dude.
Yeah. So that's the thing that's interesting about PulseChain is it's kind of showing us, it's defining for us, like, what does value actually mean on a blockchain? Yeah. And really what it is it's how big is the pipe that connects it to other value, and how often does that open or does that gate close? So consistency and deep liquidity are some of the most valuable things. And that's what PDI has now done. It's got volume, it's got volatility, it's got, great, huge, it's got big pairs with Pulse. It's got farms on 9-inch. So there's a lot of incentives built around it, and it's got a narrative. Whether you believe the narrative or not, you can't deny that it's valuable, right? It's become valuable. And so that's why we added that to the value web here.
Let me get to a quick question too. This is super interesting, by the way. Chat, if you have any, remarks or questions on the value web there, that's let us know real quick. David McCracken, guys, on a bus and headphones are dead. Is HEX still going to pump the cycle with what's going on with HEX? Please reply in chat. And just a correction, I mean with SEC. Any bullish or bear sentiments in the last couple weeks?
Dude,
after
they just pumped 5x. What? Of course it's gonna pump. Yeah. Or you
he's on a bus.
Saying, what's that?
I said he's on a bus. I want to give him and no headphones. We got to give him the best answer. Crispy says went up 5x. Are you not entertained?
You got to type it in the chat. All right.
I mean, you don't have to type in the chat either. I'm sure he's listening still. Not sure if you got the headphones.
Well, no, I'm just saying we saw 5x, right? Of course, there's plenty of opportunity for pump. We just don't know what's really going to happen. I'm going to wait and see, man. Axis will show you on the chart, man. 3 cents is imminent.
Yeah, at
least on the pay side.
And again, like here's your what you can really break this down really simply, guys. For TA, like here's the monthly HEX chart measured in pulse. This was resistance on weekly candle closes here at around 239 pulse. You broke it. The following month, you flipped that as support. This month now in November, so far, we're 12 days in. It's ejected off that and creating this massive green hammer so far. So this is a continuation candle. This is a continuation candle in the middle of a trend where someone tried to sell it down and it got bought back, and now it's printing a hammer. This could go much higher still against Pulse. So on the monthly, because you're basically in price discovery right now. There's no reason why it has to stop going up yet. In terms of the Pulse ratio, so it's in price discovery. You've broken all monthly resistances. If I go to a weekly, it really kind of shows you how nice of a retest that was. So you had this like resistance level here, which was also the wick high from the very, very, very beginning. That was retested once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and we're ejecting off that level. So then we're clear above this resistance level here at 300, and this is a little bullish doji. Basically, what you get off here is like another candle the same size as the previous. So I don't know. I could just draw a line. Something like this is possible. So you could be easily headed for 400 pulse per PX, which would be 22% higher. What would that do in dollar terms then? 22% higher would put you into my key area here against the dollar, which is right in smack dab in the middle of this box, which is right around that 2.3 cent resistance line here on the weekly dollar chart. So it's really that simple. And then if Pulse moves and does a 2x, then you 2x the price of HEX from here, from that point. So then you could go. So PHEX, if Pulse 2x's and HEX does the 20%, now you're looking at nearly a 5-cent PHEX, and that can happen very quickly. And we've seen these kinds of moves happen in HEX and in EHEX days, and we saw it at the beginning of this chart here, where you just print this massive candle. I think people forgot that EHEX went from 1.7 cents to 13 cents in like 3.5 months in 2023. It just did it like a year ago, like a year and a half ago. So yeah, it's totally possible. Just has to get through a few key levels. But I'm gonna get back to the sick ass data. So back to the liquidity web stuff here. This is my filters are $10,000 of total token liquidity. It has to have $10,000 of liquidity in the pair. So that means that the total node or the total token, like the ones that you're seeing here in the pictures, they have to have more than $10,000 of TVL to qualify. Then paired liquidity means any of the little nodes branching off of them have to have $10,000 of liquidity, and they have to do $10,000 of volume over a 24-hour period. And so we're filtering this down to the value coins and then the solid index, and what you get is something like this, which it's cool because I can drag these around and show you the routes that a coin can take to get to liquidity. So there's obviously a lot of connector points to DAI, right? DAI is kind of in the middle, and Pulse is kind of connected to everything too. So those are your two main coins on the chain. And then everything else kind of like branches off of it. And you can see these clear routes between like HEX goes to DAI, but mainly it goes to Pulse. It's got a route to PulseX. Notice there's no direct route between EUSDC and PHEX based on my filters. Nor is there a direct route from wrapped to HEX. It has to route through. And I think this is why this is so valuable, because I can literally draw you the route here.
Yep. Yeah, it really did make it pop for us, or for me anyways, that where the volume flow is and why, as I dig into the deeper details.
Super interesting.
Yeah, so we'll leave that there. I know we went pretty much elaborated on that enough. This is super valuable tool. The question from Bitfinesse of, is there a future market supply on hexfire.io?
Yes.
It's called You
got to go to the chart. Go to the chart section for regular public up on the left there. You go back to the main menu.
Okay, so this is a free chart, you guys. You go to charts.
Yeah.
And then you go to
right at the bottom there, right?
Is it hex mining data?
I can't read what the screen says here. It's estimated hex payout. Hey, and give me a title. I'll give how about replacement for Hex Vision? Maybe we should do that. That'd be easier for people to find it. But it's down there on that right hand side.
Fire Vision.
Yeah, Fire Vision. No, oh my God. Yeah, hey Bitfinesse, you need something else, let me know. I have the data, right? So I can put up 30 of these in different ways. Oh, here it is though. Yeah. T-shares and HEX. And you can switch between the two. So you can kind of look at this. This one allows you to do drill down and drill up, so you can actually go up to different levels too. Now, do be aware that I am guessing at what the future supply will be. So I don't know exactly what the payouts will be using the current payouts.
So this one's cool. Estimated T-shares expiring per month. The bow wave continues to go out. Most people stake for 2 months or less on rollers. Some go out, 3 to 4 months. But then generally you're either in that camp or you're long. So then I think that's kind of where a lot of the long-term hexicans who understand the system are at. They built their ladders a long time ago. And so all these little, oh no, why did I go backwards?
I don't know.
All these little yellow bars where there's huge spikes in those are where the t-shirt rate really gets a nice jump, if I'm not mistaken. These ones here.
Ooga.
So November of next year, November, it's every November, it looks like somebody's staked pretty big right before the HEX birthday. So you see big share rate increases then.
Shout out to Hex's 5th birthday coming up December 2nd, 2024. Maybe celebrate on the 1st though, because that's part of the weekend.
So I mean, we can look at,
if you can
Hex.
post that up. Oh, sorry.
Oh,
For RH.
Yeah, got it.
Thanks, buddy.
so this is a cool tool that kind of, I don't know if you guys have heard of it. Many of you have heard of the Mayer multiple from the Bitcoin era, which is just a measure of the price from the 200-day moving average. So this is like PHEX price action with the history of EHEX before it. It's not combined. It's just regular PHEX. Anytime that the price reaches the red line, it's usually marked a sell event. Now, in the last bull market, we consistently played with that level a ton until we flipped it as support when we went parabolic. And right now we touched it, we came back to the middle, and then we busted up off that and we're touching it again. So it really is kind of a unique moment here where, you know, are we really going to explode like we did here? Or are we going to go like crazy parabolic and flip it and spend like many, many months just going vertical? Are we here yet? I guess is the question. Are we here yet? Or are we more like in this period where we're building up big price structure like this type of action? So I would say that, like, when you look at the size of that move and the size of these moves back in here, they're very similar. This actually looks the most like right here. And this is where that support came in. That actually looks not that much different. So we may, who knows, we may be headed for 6 months of glory with PHEX.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these aren't.
Go ahead. I got a ton of questions if you guys want to plow through a few of them.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, do a question check-in real quick. Pedro Fabrero says, what are the narratives that could pump PulseChain SCS, missile ETH, pumping site day, XP to dollar meme? What else?
Some of it's already happened, so
I'll give you a narrative. I'm sorry, Axis. Go ahead. You go first.
Well, I was just going to say Trump was elected. That's bullish. CZ's out of jail. That's bullish for the alt market. What else you got?
Honestly, I don't think the two of you fully understand what we're dealing with when we talk about this PRC network of liquidity, where all these tokens have some goddamn value, millions of dollars worth of value on PulseChain. And all these dudes and ladies that are over there on Ethereum haven't figured out they got value yet. And it ain't little value. It's a lot of value. Okay, I'm sure the kids running around with a little bit of this and that ain't got nothing. But man, there's a lot of value on PulseChain just hanging there, waiting for people to come over and get it. I think that PRC narrative is going to be revived.
Well, I mean, I hate to cut away from HEX, but has anyone seen the PDI chart lately?
Baby.
I mean, this is literally the trajectory.
I told you it was
Look
going
at
to
this is what it's doing.
I told you it was going to peg. You didn't listen to me. No. I'm joking, man. I'm joking. I don't know if it's going to peg or not, but it sure as hell has performance, don't it? And that's what I mean. This has real value. People have this in their wallets on PulseChain that have never used PulseChain.
Mm-hmm. That's right. What is the implication of this thing going up to a cent or 10 cents and you have 300,000 holders from the ETH Genesis from pre-fork that had this stuff and exchanges are sitting on millions of dollars of it. Like, are they not going to just eventually flip the switch and want a piece of the? I mean, they're going to have a piece of the action. Well, you know, they got grandfathered into the action. Like, yeah, it's so you're right, and it could start with one of them, and then it could domino from there. Like, you know, every so often I'll forget, like, oh yeah, by the way, PRAP BTC is still around, and people are still buying it.
Well, go look at the. I guess we can't see it. Well, maybe it'll show it. Show it if you're looking at the pairs. When you're looking at the pairs, you just pull up something like even the P wrapped BTC and see what it's paired against. It's paired against Pulse, right? Because Pulse is ETH, and that's how it is the comparison in the fork. And so they all have path to value, like significant value. I know I get excited about all this stuff. You might have to select the all nodes. Your screen lags for me when you're doing it, so I don't know if you've actually already done that or not, because I can't see it click it.
It's loading in.
Yeah, there's a lot of data. But my point is, the more I went into this web and I start looking at it, I'm like, man, some of these people understood this a lot better than I did, like the Atropa guys and even the HOA guys, because they made these connections with all these tokens that when they were super cheap, like cheap. And now I'm like, how am I going to come up? If I wanted to go put $1 million PDI pool up, where am I going to get $1 million worth of PDI or $500,000 worth of PDI? Could have done it. I could have done it at the bottom, but I didn't even think about it.
So here's our value web between PDI, PRAP, ETC, and PLS. So there's a pretty good amount. Well, so I'm it's on its own out here, floating. It's got a bag. It's got a PUSDC pair. It's got a teddy bear. Let me see if I can find the link. If I cut down
there's probably
my filters a bit. Yeah, still not, but there must be a link, but the link is probably to why am I not finding a PRAP BTC to PLS WPLS pair yet? Surprised that hadn't done. There's no way that hadn't done volume like that.
I don't know. I'll have to look into it and see why it is. Not a perfect tool yet. We're getting there.
Another question.
Those are the things that we kind of resolve as we go along till we find them. Sorry, RHMax, go ahead.
It's a pretty good
question from Mina here. Well, I guess a statement, but see what you think. Yep, we could check in on BankX, all that. What's stupid about HEX when BankX has 40 million HEX they want to sell? Let's be real. BankX.
It's only $1 million right now. It's only $1 million right now, guys. It's really not that much in the grand scheme of things.
If you guys send me $1 million worth of tokens so I can buy it, I'll go buy it all and we'll put it in trust and do one big stake. How about that? I don't think anybody's gonna send me $1 million, but it's kind of like a fun idea. We should take that off the market though somehow.
It's only a matter of time.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Hey, Sloth, you do it. You help us, Sloth. Come on. I see Sloth out there.
Sloth is Manimal of Hexaco. He is the Manimal.
I don't know. Mina, is it Mina or Mina? Was it Mina or Mina that was just up there?
I was saying Mina. I was trying to pronounce that as a name. I guess that'd be Mina. Like, yeah.
Yeah. So you know what I'm saying though about that. I think it's a gift myself. I mean, so sure, okay. I don't like the BankX situation, whatever. I don't have any control over that. But what a gift that the price is suppressed. So if the narrative is that you believe HEX has value and that it's going to become more scarce, and that value is going to cause it to overperform during different parts of the ball, it's a gift that is being held down. Man, because if you believe in that narrative, you can just load up. I mean, I know people that have loaded up on tens of millions of it. I haven't had a chance to do it, but.
Last question here, Marlene Alex. What's going on with Richard? Win live stream, too much silence. Any over under on live stream?
We're talking Richards.
Yeah.
Yep, he'll come up right when he needs to. And not a second before.
Oh, here's one. Sorry, I missed this one too. K has is the pegging having big influence on HEX?
Well, it seems like it. Yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Which pegging?
I mean, pegging in the sense of like, I mean, exactly. When I think of that, I think of any of the coin copies from Ethereum. Is that, are we saying all encompassing pegging? Is like the narrative of pegging having a big influence on HEX?
Mm-hmm. Well, HEX is the heat sink of all value and storage. So in just a generic statement, the more activity on PulseChain, the more value will get logged into HEX, and it'll grow. So it's all good. All activity is good for HEX. As far as the pegging itself and the influence near term, yeah, it's a good thing, because these things are all tied together, right? And so if one's making a move towards a pegging, it brings the value up of other things, and you start seeing the jockeying, the ratios, and as more value come in, you're going to see the horses getting higher and higher. Imagine the little carnival game where you see your little clown head or horse going up. They're gonna kind of like juggle their way, to which one's going to win and get to the top as that value comes in. The pegging is a big part of that, and that way. And plus, it's a wonderful narrative, right? I mean, listen, you guys, somebody said check your IQ at the door today, right? Okay, so check it at the door, right? Don't be so smart. Don't you like the idea of wrap BTC going to 80,000 on PulseChain? Oh yeah, right. You like the idea of PDI going to $1? Yeah. Can it go there? We don't know, but I mean, hey, it's a hell of a narrative. People love it.
Last one on your two HEX price prediction 2025. Maybe an interesting question, actually, since we've saw a little bit of the pieces going.
I got yelled at last night when I made my prediction, because I went, I got so I'm not going to give you my prediction. I'll give you my prediction afterwards. I think multiple dollar HEX is possible. How about that?
Yeah, it is possible. A lot of people are going to sell before you hit $1, but I just feel like the adoption is going to be there to solve for the demand, or the supply and demand imbalance. We waited so long to get this moment, and you're never getting the big drawdown like you had this time. There was like a complete rebalance that occurred because you invented 4 coins out of thin air, and you extracted out of the one to make the other 5. They make the other 4, plus thousands of other projects. So yeah, that doesn't happen twice. So I just feel like this is like a rubber band that's so held back so far that it's gonna fly into the sun. HEX price, if I just run a fib extension on it, let's see what the fib extension tool says. Okay, so 7.5 cents is like totally near term, like less than a year. And then the original HEX hit the 15,618, which is around 25 cents. That was on the first major pump when the original Godwell move came in, and then the following buying. So yeah, 25 cents could be hit pretty easily on PHEX. And then when you start going into like log charts, which that's kind of where you get adoption and hysteria and manic buying and stuff like that. Your 1618's at 15 cents, your 2618's at 72 cents, your 3618's at $4, and your 4236 is at $11. And your stupid number it doesn't even make sense. Yeah, you can't get there. So I mean, yeah, these are some of let's start with 10 cents, right? So let's work our way to 10 cents, it's doable.
I'm with Tam in the chat. I say 55, but in 15 years. Maybe sooner.
Yeah, look, anything's possible when you onboard 100,000 stakers a month for 3 years straight. like that's where you start getting into numbers that today's like little closed group just can't really imagine. Like that's why I say crypto people, in order to be in crypto, you have to have an imagination, because like the numbers just get ridiculous and they don't make sense. And it's because you were one of 15,000 people, and then that turns into 15 million people. And so it totally changes what's possible when stuff like that happens and you get like household name level of acceptance. I wanted to bring up, is there any other questions? Because I do want to get to some other stuff before we have to wrap, if that's okay.
Yep. We're good for now. Go for it.
So this is the correlations matrix, and this is, I chose PHEX as the base asset to compare against. And so these are all the tokens that move with HEX. And a 1 is like the best thing. Basically, if something has a 1, it's basically the exact same asset. So PHEX and PDESI basically do the exact same thing all the time. They always move up and down together. And that's probably because PDESI doesn't really have a lot of buying and selling on it. And so over the last 3 months, they've been moving exactly the same. So has combined HEX price, and so has Maxi, basically. And for that matter, wrapped pulse is a 0.98, which means that HEX and pulse are effectively moving the exact same right now over the last 3 months. That's interesting. And then you go down the list and like, those are super strong correlations with PulseX, UFO, Axis, ICOSA, HOA, HEX, and then you're starting to get into the still very strong correlations, but Atropa, and then one near and dear to my heart, that's Comm on PulseChain. Now, when I look at the, Crispy and I talk big game about Comm because we think it's a solution for the long-term staking problem, to get more value locked up in the system and get more long-term believers, to create value for more people in the short run and the long run, really. And we think that this is a cool tool to basically pay. Basically, when you buy Comm, you're paying for somebody else to come in behind you and stake HEX for a long time to get an instant rebate. And notice how Comm isn't as correlated to HEX as ICOSA is, or some of the derivatives. And when you boil that down, really, I think, is Hedron in here? I don't see Hedron.
We'd have to add it, and it just didn't happen on there.
So here's Hedron here. Well, that's E-Hedron. Here's P-Hedron. Where's P-Hex? P-Hedron and P-Hex is a 1.0. So they're doing the exact same thing. So why is Comm decorrelated over the last 30 days, or not as correlated to HEX? It's actually because it's overperforming HEX in a big way. And this is the Comm chart since launch, effectively, against Pulse.
Hey, do you know who is buying it? You see that tail way at the end of the dragon over on the left-hand side? Go all further, keep going all the way left. Who's buying right there? Who do you think was buying? You know who was buying that. Who told you about it?
Are we supposed to say? I don't know.
I don't know who bought it. All right.
I can tell you what. At this stage in the game, when PulseChain launched back here in May, my radar was not pointed at Comm whatsoever.
Oh, no. Hey, listen, I knew about it, and I just liked it because Kodiak is a hell of a developer, and it was built all for HEX, for native HEX stakers, and it's built to build, help people build their ladders. I mean, that's the whole idea, and to provide incentive to get into HEX. So of course I loved it. But it wasn't until Johnny Sachs came along and was really talking about it towards the end of last year, which is where you see the run up going all the way to October, November, right? And that time frame, I think that's where Johnny came on the scene.
Mm-hmm. Well, Johnny's the one that popularized this idea as this is the first ever automatic marketing tool for HEX that can actually onboard millions of users, because you're basically paying them to onboard. And he figured out, and he did an entire mathematical matrix of how you could onboard the most amount of people with the least amount of liabilities, and then he coined it the secret weapon strategy. And so that is a already actively happening strategy that's been happening, and it's resulted in, since this wick low, it's resulted in a 231x in over Pulse. So it's done Comm has done a 231x over Pulse since July 6th. So we're keeping in mind that Hedron has done a 3.2x, I think, in the same time frame. And so this is completely, and you know, people will see this and like, well, I'm not buying the top on that. But what they don't understand, and this is why I'm so firm on this stance and why the HEX community needs to get behind it, especially the staker class, is because the amount of capital that it requires to mint more of this stuff is outrageous. So, you know, you got to think this is a whole redistribution event, because what happened was, you know, HEX launched, and then 3 years later, Communist launches, and it has to get minted from all the old stakers that have stakes in the system. And so what that resulted in was, you know, basically nobody valued it, and they sold all their stuff off back here, and they sold it off here, and they sold it off here, and they still either don't acknowledge it or don't see it. There is a class of people that is believing and seeing it now. But the reason why it's making these price floors and going higher and doing big numbers against Pulse and HEX is because, for example, to go mint yourself a whale position in Comm today, you would have to stake 960K of HEX, which is 50 million HEX. 50 million HEX for 5555. And if you did that and you staked $960,000 of HEX for 5555, you would get back $53,000 of Comm. And so that's important to consider, because the amount of cost to get that amount of HEX, it almost is like showing you how undervalued Comm really is. Comm is virtually free when you figure you could come in and get a shark position in this thing for $5,300 instead of staking the, you know, 96 grand a HEX for 15 years. And that imbalance in the distribution where there is a class of people understanding this and buying it all up now, because it's basically like 20x off of the cost to mint it. They're basically putting their economic energy into something that's going to pay it forward, so to speak, and automatically market the thing to new HEX stakers. This is the instant rebate. So that if some guy does finally decide, okay, I want to stake, you know, $9 million of HEX, I can still get $53,000 back of value today. Some guy may do that. Some guy may do less than that. But the point is that there's an 8% rebate. But what happens if that goes to 18% or 28% or 80%? And the market understands the value of, we will pay you to buy HEX and stake it for a long time, because it's a net value add to the system. And so we've went ahead, and Kodiak, the dev of this token, who I think is brilliant, basically took me and he said, hey man, I got an idea for a token, contract, I should say. It's not a token, it's a contract. And I think the Axis token is the perfect thing to create it on top of. And what we think is going to do is it's going to prove. So this is this new thing I'm talking about. So I'm going to play a video for you guys, and then we'll go talk a little bit about it before we wrap up, because I want to give RHMax a chance to say, you know, why are you making this thing, and how is it really going to help HEX? Like, that's what the bottom line is. How is this going to help HEX? So I'm going to pull my screen up here and present a video, which I hope you can play, and then we can go from there.
Beat dropped. Well,
That's a hell of a video, man. Markable did a great job with it. I told him right away. The first time I saw it, I was like, man, you don't even need a protocol. Nobody needs to even launch a protocol. Just give him an address and show him the video. You know, now that's a joke, guys. Joke. I'm joking, of course. But I mean,
that's remarkable. That's remarkable. Yeah, I mean, that's the first question too. Like, what do you, how's this good for Hex? Like, you nailed it right on the head.
Yeah. Well, so, you know, this kind of goes back to Hexfire and the liquidity webs. Like, you know, I made a token. It's been around for over a year. It did billions of percent. It's got, you know, $1 million of its own value on its own web, and then it's connected to SolidX with $2 million more dollars. But that's not enough to move a $40 million Hex market on its own. So so the only thing I can really do with the success that I've had is bond access to Comm, and hopefully in doing so, it does two things. One is it proves that Hex Comm works, because there's someone in the chat right here that says, I just don't get Comm. He says, I don't get the whole Comm idea. What is the amount to buy, at least at the moment? Yeah.
Can I give you my no brain thinking on that? Like a real fast one?
Yeah.
With Comm? All right. So here's the thing with Comm, if you talk about all these things where people donate money to advertise and to market, that's what it is. You go buy Comm, the price of Comm goes up. People stake Hex to get the Comm, they get their instant rebate, right? So it's 1-to-1 conversion for dollars, which is a huge deal. Also, though, you get to hold on to the token, and there's a whole bunch of other really committed people that are holding on to the token, including the people who are market making for the token, who really want Hex to go up. And so some of us conclude that means really good things for Comm, which has reduced inflation over time, that's tied in price with Hex, with really strong, holders, right, that are going to be willing to stack that Comm up.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I mean, that it's Comm tokenizes T-shares, and because it was so undervalued in the beginning, like a lot of that supply that was circulating from the OG Hex staker class that got dumped got absorbed in this huge run up here by a few market makers. And a lot of that got locked in a time pays me vault. So that's all been broadcasted to the world. That happened.
Yep.
And then what you're doing now,
and it's not a secret that's Johnny Sachs, right? He came out and did it online with Matty Allen, and he locked that crap up for years. Right?
And time pays me. And so, like, this was your first parabolic advance on that, and that was just from Johnny's initial market making on it. And now the market is aware of the secret weapon strategy, and now the market is doing its own bigger parabolic move. So right now the Comm price is already up 790x. But as I said before in my demonstration, to stake $1 million of Hex for 15 years, you're only getting back 50 grand of Comm. That means Comm is too cheap. It should be more, like at least some percentages more. It's just too cheap. And so with the system that we have, like, it only makes sense to combine this $200,000 liquidity pool web with Axis Alive. And Axis Alive is its own version of Comm that's going to prove it. And so it's going to take this token that's up 790x against Pulse, and it's going to give it another potential to do another 70 to 100x. And the reason is because most of the circulating supply right now is held by believers. The only amount that's not held by believers is the stuff that can be minted by future Hex stakes, which means that if the price of Comm goes up and we can help it get there, somebody else is going to come in, buy Hex, push the Hex price up, stake it, get the Comm back, dump the Comm for more Hex, or dump the Comm for whatever. Market makers just absorb the dips forever. And what you could see is, a big move. We just saw a giga whale at 3701, a giga whale come in here and send the price of this token up 151% in a day. It was like a day and a half. And this just happened the other day. So there are new whales actively participating in this movement. And so what we decided was we took the, I had Kodiak work on this protocol. This is essentially a 2-token fusion. So in the same way that HEX and Comm are minted based on each other. So, you stake HEX for a long time, you lock that HEX up. Comm represents the amount of cost to get your HEX plus the time. So there's 2 cost components. There's the principal, and then there's the time component of how long it takes to mint the stuff. You get to mint some up front, of course, and that's where that instant rebate comes in. So anyone that's, this is the Axis Alive front end. It's the same similar system where Alive is the second token that's minted from the burning of Axis. So in HEX, you lock your HEX for a long time, and when the stake matures, you get back your principal amount plus the interest that you are owed. Plus, you get the Comm start payout when you make the stake, and you get the Comm end payout when you end the stake. So this system is similar in that you have Axis token or from the market, or you have it, and you commit that to the system, and you lock half and you burn half. And the difference here is that the burned amount is permanently burned. So unlike HEX principal gets returned to the user. Axis does not. Axis value transforms from the burned amount into Alive, and it's just paid out in 2 tranches. It's paid out, a smaller portion is paid out up front. That's the instant rebate, and then the majority of it's paid out at the end. So they're mechanically very similar, and anyone that's staked HEX in their past is going to recognize this, and it's going to look very simple. You could just you pick an amount. You could stake anywhere from or you can commit anywhere from 1 day to 29, 20 days. And I'll just go ahead. This is on testnet, guys. This isn't mainnet, but it's worth showing you guys that it works. So this has been audited. It's immutable. There's no admin keys. There's no pre-mint. There's no pre-mine. Gas fees will never be a problem because it's been optimized, and we solved the gas fee problem. There's just so much good about the system that it's competition for HEX, but it's also synergistic with HEX because there's going to be an incentivized pools that bonds Comm to Alive, which they're both the end point tokens, right? Comm only gets created because HEX where stakes were made, and Alive only gets made because somebody burned Axis and locked some for a long period of time. And so I know that so this is where I would segue to say, like, I know especially your audience is like maybe more maxi or like doesn't get why this stuff needs to be to be built.
Core coin specialists.
Yeah, which is fine because I'm the closest. I would say I'm more of a HEX maxi than 99% of people in the entire ecosystem. I've been literally spilling my guts about HEX for almost 5 years now, and so I consider myself. I left Bitcoin and Ethereum mining to go to do DeFi with HEX. Like that was the step I took. And I love HEX. And so I want to add value to it and create value and prove that Communis is a direct route to onboard the next million people into HEX by paying them to do it through this instant rebate mechanic. And so, Axis and Alive can prove it in a much faster span than HEX Comm would on its own. I mean, you can look at the Comm price and say, hey, that's pretty good. 790x in a year and a half. Like that's pretty good. But we think we can accelerate this to the upside even more by brute forcing the price upwards through Alive and Axis because of that deflationary mechanic. So there is only 500 Axis in the community supply, and that's all going to be visible on the stats page, which I'm about to show you. So, but before I get there, did you want to ask any questions at this page, Max? I did just make a commitment. I did a 0.1 of a coin for 20 days, which is 8 years max length in this system.
Yeah, I saw that one. No, I mean, no questions so far. Go for it.
Yeah, so we also took this to another level with like a level of transparency that like nobody's done for their token before, because I think a huge component to making a token be actionable is by giving people the tools to know everything about what's going on with the players that hold it. And so like this here is, there's two panels here. The panel on the left is, and by the way, if you like this stuff, we can build this for HEX and Comm. Like it doesn't end with Axis and Alive. This is the beginning of AxisAlive.app. So you could see here like the core Richard. So this is a player in the space. This is the portfolio watcher, and this is the whale watch panel. So on the portfolio viewer, you can see that this guy is the #1 Poseidon in Axis, and he holds 5% of his liquid holdings in Richard Hart tokens here, and broken down by which coin. And then they're solid index positions. You know, we're obviously partnering with a lot of these other tokens like Nope, 2Fucks, PDI even has some big pairs with SolidX and Axis as well, Fire and SolidX. And so we want to display like the coins that we think are valuable and going to continue to have value for the long term. And look, if I hover, I can see how much specifically, like this guy is holding 67 Axis worth 1.8 million. He's got $44,000 of Pulse, $32,000 of PulseX. You know, so this guy's pretty cool. It doesn't stop there though. You can scroll down and you can see like their liquidity pools, what they're in, how much is in each liquidity pool, what DEX it's on, what the LP value is worth in total, what percentages in each one of the DEXs. So that it's basically a master database of all of the players and liquidity pools. And I can filter out by league. So I can go Poseidons, I can go whales, sharks, dolphins. So I'll go pick a Poseidon, or this guy here, 3146. People might know that as the fire whale, that 3146 address. This dude's got 60 Axis. So he's got 12% ownership of the entire community supply of Axis, which is currently sitting at 495 tokens. And we'll get to the inflation bit in a moment, which is why I think it's there's a lot to demo here. And so I'll do more demos this week with other people, because I know we're coming up on an hour and a half here.
We're coming up. I like the loading triangle there. It's pretty cool.
So this will load in, and then I'll just scroll down while it's doing that. This is the charting section, and this is important because you got to give people the tools to be able to make decisions. So like I want people to know when Axis gets inflated, when Alive gets started, commitments get started, commitments get ended. I want them to know how much Axis has been burned over time. What's the rebate been like? You know, how much was early end staked? What's the start payouts total in USD value? So like you can see here on 9/11, somebody committed got a $68,000 start payout. This is testnet, so the valuations are based on testnet values, but this is going to be a good way to see the activity inside of the system over time. So it's totally transparent in that way. I think this particular chart's interesting because the blue line is the Axis price and the green line is the rebate. So I know we didn't really touch too much on the rebate, but more or less that's how much dollar value you get back for making a commitment. So I'll finish out on that with this because I know we're running out of time. But essentially, if you were to take, let's say you bought $1,000 of Axis off market right now, and you committed it for the max length of time, you're getting back $880 of value. That's what that 88% is. So it's like, how much do I have to pay you max to get you to go buy Axis off the market, push up the price, and then commit it to the system to get some amount back? Is it 50%? Is it 30%? Is it 100%? And because it's the free market that decides the price of Alive that creates this rebate, ultimately it's up to the free market to find out where is the maximum amount of adoption and onboarding you can get with the least amount of overhead and liabilities in the system. And so the free market floating rebate is part of the innovation of this system, which is also a component of Communis. So Communis also pays an instant rebate, but it got missed by most people. And what didn't become really understood until Johnny Stack started talking about the coupon rate, and the coupon rate of how much you can get back from making a 15-year HEX stake. So, but because Axis Alive is so scarce already, and it will be deflationary because the only new Alive that comes in is from permanently burned Axis. And you know that there's only there's a 495 cap on supply right now circulating. You should be able to accelerate what would happen in HexCom at a quicker rate through Axis Alive, which should lead to faster price performance. And if Comm and Alive are bonded tightly enough together with liquidity, it should drag the Comm price up, which should make more people want to stake HEX for the max length of time, which should create more value for everybody on PulseChain. So ultimately, it's a really grand vision, and it starts with a great user experience, a great UI, usable on mobile and desktop, and then just bringing these tools to the coins that are worth it, right? HEX is one of the coins that's worth it. HEX and Comm, I think, would be the most important coins to make sure that they're getting taken care of, and people are building on them into the future. So yeah, I'm super excited for this, guys. It's been a labor of love with my small little team of like 6 people for like 8 months now, and we're about ready to launch. So keep your eyes peeled. As I'm speaking, Axis is at $27,000 a token. And the other thing too is like people that are a little bit like kind of like bummed out that the price is so high and how like there's even an edge in that case. Just keep in mind that when you mint Alive, you're minting a lot more units of Alive. So the unit bias thing, it comes back down to level head. So like if I, just to give an example, to do a 1 coin commitment for max length, you get 287 Alive from the start payout. So the units, it's going to be way easier to accumulate units, which is going to lead to ratio trading between Axis and Alive. It's going to create opportunities for people that way too. So traders, speculators, it really does. The system is made for every investor profile type. It's very well thought out. Crispy and I and the team have like pounded our head against the wall trying to break this thing and make it better. And I'm just really proud and excited to launch and see how the market responds to it.
There are a lot of people building on PulseChain. The chain seems alive. Capital alive.
I love it.
It's pretty alive.
I love it, guys. And I want PulseChain to succeed so badly. And I know that we're so close. We're so close. I'm going to go look at PLS. This chain is about to explode. Like I can feel it in my bones. Like,
can we do a 2-minute explosion? Wrap up.
Yeah, you got to get going. Yeah, I could go forever right now. This is like, okay, you're potentially putting in a double top on PLS, right? I don't think so. I think this is setting up quite nicely. Reminds me a little bit of like before we broke out back here. You getting the same kind of little dippity do, and then boom.
Dippity do. Screw your resistance. We're breaking through.
And
$2 PLS.
It might come from HEX, right? It might come from HEX. Like that might be the driver that drags this thing up. So
somebody asked earlier when 1 cent PLS. What's your 30-second remark on that comment?
Well, let me show you a chart, and this will be my last thing I'll leave you guys with. Chris, do you have anything to add to all this craziness?
No, I don't have anything else to add to it. I'm excited to sell. All hell. Then we'll see. PulseChain to the moon. Let's go to Mars. I'm ready.
Okay, so check this out. And guys, this is just not going to happen. I'm just going to say it's not going to happen, but I do want to show you what's possible. This yellow line is Ethereum's first cycle on Pulse. Now, let me zoom in here and give you a really quick little. So we're basically at the base of where Ethereum bottomed, and then it went straight up and bull flagged, broke out, bull flagged, broke out, mini chop, consolidated, then ripped. And we're not that far off of the rip point if it's going to happen in the same time frame. Now, it doesn't have to happen in this way, but I mean, this is basically saying that in December, we're going to go up and flip saturated support. And then in January, we're going to go test the all-time highs. And this could be the area where we run into some trouble and we create sideways action down here. But in the Ethereum case, you know, what this would look like is more adoption than we are expecting. We'd get a little bit higher, another markup, one more leg, and then we come all the way back down to test that old all-time high as support. And it's literally mathematical. It's just perfect. Look at how that comes back down to test. So this is the big markup that you do not want to miss. If it's going to occur, whether it stops at SAC rate, this local high, or the all-time high, it's all good for us. It's all good. And then, I mean, you zoom out your 1 penny price target. I mean, it's saying that it could come as early as summer of 2026. And my theory here was longer cycle theory. So it's just a lot of people are saying that we're going to top on Bitcoin and ETH between, you know, April and September of next year. And I mean, I'm happy to argue that it could go longer. I just think that we're in unprecedented times.
Does longer pay better?
It does in more than one ways. So stick to your guns, guys. You've made it this far. We're very happy to be able to, you know, be up and face in the community and be back in this chain, and to appreciate all your guys' support along the way too.
Awesome stuff. AxisLive.com, hexfire.io.
That's right.
Xfire.io.
That's all we got for you today. Everyone, are you not entertained? Great stream.
Are you not entertained, Access? Are you not entertained?
I mean, I get a kick out of it.
Scivive and 5555. We are out.
Quattro Cinco.